Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another webinar at Topcoder. Very excited today to bring back our esteemed guest, Dr. Ganesh Sundaram, who is the CEO at Alef. As many of you know, we have been working with Alef over the last year on really, expanding into their APIs and into 5G and their edge network. And many of you have competed on Topcoder competitions, learning and digging into what they're building. And I'm very excited today to have Ganesh here with us to talk about the future, to talk about, really kind of simplifying wireless connectivity, and really kind of where Alef is taking their private edge network, and really kind of what's kind of the next steps. So welcome, Ganesh. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Excited to be back on this platform, Adam. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And the Topcoder, it's one of those things where it's been a journey. Like you said, we've been involved for the past 1 year, but exciting times ahead.
Yes. So I'd like to start off right now. If you could give everyone a bit of your background, tell us a little bit about yourself. Not everyone here has heard you, or maybe they've seen previous webinars, but I think it's always good to kind of let them know who you are and really kind of like where you started with the founding of Alef.
Sure. I'm Ganesh Sundaram, and I'm the founder of Alef Edge. I'm trying to be precise in terms of how we got to this point, which is we started this journey with respect to Alef well before Edge was cool. That's the best way to describe it. Now it's just such an exciting space to be in, and various taxonomies are being built. A lot of deployments that are taking place. The community and the ecosystem is getting formed around the edge. But prior to this, I was at Bell Labs in the mobility business unit, where the one word or one line description of what I was asked to do and what I loved doing was work on the next generation, whatever the next generation was. And prior to that, I got my PhD in mathematics from Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. And if you can see sort of a common thread between some of these things, the best way to describe it is I really love to solve hard problems. Okay. And I felt that a few years ago, well before I started this company, the cellular industry, it was going through a transition where there were some significant areas of, friction, both technology friction and business friction, okay? Things that are easy to conceive will take a lot of time to build. So that was one area of technology friction. Even if it was built, it would take like a couple of years to deploy and start to see it come to life. And so with that in mind, I started looking at it as this is actually stifling the cellular economy. Yes, it's great that various parts of the mobile economy were taking off, and I was able to learn from the parts, especially around the device ecosystem, thanks to Apple and also the Android ecosystems, teaching us a few things about how a community-driven opportunity can actually be a force multiplier. So I started looking at the problem statement of the industry of how can we eliminate friction in the cellular industry with respect to any generation, or even if it's the smallest incremental thing we want to be able to implement, how can we make it happen instead of years to like rapidly roll it out? I really started thinking about it years to months, and now I'm starting to think about months to minutes. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my journey. So I've been through many areas of the cellular generation transitions, but happy to be here at this stage to be able to talk about some of those things. But I hope that gives your the Topcoder platform audience a sense of my background and why the concept of the edge, the way I started conceiving it, was there are two ways to look at it. Either you optimize the network and make the next generation of applications work, uh, or you optimize the application to make it fit. I felt the edge was more prone to the former, which is how can you make things better, faster, cheaper, simpler, and do it using a different technology. And connectivity meets computing at the point of consumption is how I was able to synthesize based on my background in mobility and my desire to solve hard problems. Th- that's been my journey thus far.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And I think as part of that, many of the top coders that are watching today are, definitely aware of, your company now, and definitely aware of, the different competitions that we've been running. And, we've really been kind of focused on the APIs, right, that you guys are developing. Can you tell us just a little bit more about kind of like where you're headed with the APIs and why that's important for, the network that you're creating?
Sure. So before we get into the specifics on the APIs, I know I've talked about it in the past, even in this platform. Fundamentally, 5G, the next generation of wireless, which is getting rolled out from a cellular perspective, um, one of the fundamental ingredients of 5G is um, is edge computing and the edge in general, right?
Mhm.
And if you take out the edge, the rest of the complexity is already daunting, and the edge adds a layer of complexity. So the starting point of understanding the friction, in my mind, was to be able to look at what are the areas of complexity that needed to be identified so that we can abstract it and automate it. So that's where the API mantra started forming in my head. And this has been how APIs have been realized as products, even in the past in other areas. You start to look at complexities, you abstract them, and then you automate them, and then you start to expose to a community. And then now there are labels attached to those, which I somewhat really subscribe to, but at the same time, I think it's a little limiting to call it as low code or no code. But it's really it's a flywheel effect and the network effect that gets created. So we felt that 5G needed simplification from a technology and abstraction and friction perspective, but the force multiplier in terms of commercial adoption comes from exposing it in the form of APIs so that the community can start to implement something on it. And going back to my earlier comment, we want to bring it down from months to minutes.
Mhm.
So anybody with a desire to be able to roll out their own private mobile network ought to be able to take advantage of it. So, but before we got to private mobile networks, one of the use cases within private mobile networks happens to be immersive video. Okay, what is the power of immersive video in the context of 5G, and how can people somewhat touch and feel it? And so, as part of the competitions that you've mentioned, we started off our journey, the Topcoder partnership journey, with exposing the community to a few areas of APIs around video. And then we followed it up with some competitions around, video and machine vision and image recognition and video recognition, recognition of objects within videos. So anything that involves low latency in computing became a mantra or a driving force behind how we have been approaching some of these things. So that's been the journey thus far. But what we are trying to do in the short term and longer term also is how can the APIs drive a do-it-yourself paradigm within enterprises where they can deploy their own private 5G networks, okay? And the vision of the corporation and also the industry is the following. Right now, there are, I don't know, 4 or 5 mobile operators, large operators in the United States. There are a handful of mobile virtual network operators, right? And then there are some wireless internet service providers who tend to be more local and rural, right? However, the concept of owning your own private mobile network and enterprise IT getting involved in something telco was fascinating to us. We saw the market trend, and largely we want to take credit, and I want to give a shout out to my team for building the momentum and contributing to the momentum around telco meets IT. And so enterprises are starting to feel the need to deploy their own private mobile networks and take it to the next level. So I call this as the private 5G opportunity. And so they become their own operator. So instead of 5 mobile operators and a handful of other variations, we're going for 1 million operators, okay?
Yeah.
But being an operator means you have to understand all the complexities. And IT doesn't have the desire to get into the complexity. So that's how we were able to connect the dots and said, just take a rifle shot at what the market wants, leverage the power of a community like the Topcoder platform, get developers to start looking at it from the point of view of, is this simple enough? Can I get involved in it? How can we make a career out of it? And then the network effect starts. So that's been the API journey. It's been focused primarily on 5G, but this also goes back to how we get to 5G or how we got to 5G, right? There are previous generations of technology that we've gone through, and a lot has been written about it, but very little has been discussed about the economic drivers and the economic effects that got, and the economies that got created. But that's a subject of a separate discussion. But 5G, I believe, is going to be, in the immediate term, largely focused on private mobile networks and how enterprises can take advantage of it. And there's also another parallel thing that has happened in the industry, which is called CBRS. And I'm happy to expand on that if there's an interest in understanding CBRS as we go forward in this conversation.
Yeah, I think I definitely want to dive into that because that's a conversation we've been having. But one of the things, I think the context you just provided around private mobile networks, I think, many times we're in the weeds of like, okay, here's a competition. We're looking to solve this machine learning plus API. I think what's really great for the audience right now is to kind of understand what would a company do with a private mobile network? Like what's some context around that?
Okay, sure, no problem. Again, this is what I call as, let's start with soundbite just so that we keep it simple and then we get layers of, it's kind of the peel the onion approach. If you're going to have your own private mobile network, first it starts off with spectrum, right? And having spectrum, we want to be able to, so digital transformation and network transformation in an enterprise is not something which is worth a debate. It's just happening. Yep. And the pandemic has proved that it's an imperative, okay? And there are market reports and conversations that we've had one-on-one with senior IT heads and CIOs of corporations and CXOs in general, that they're probably advancing their digital transformation investments by up to 5 years, 6 years in certain corporations. So it's no longer an innovation project, okay? It's really an imperative. What has happened is a typical enterprise which has maybe a dozen branch offices with say 10,000 employees, not typical, a large enterprise, let's say, or a typical enterprise with even 1,000 employees now has 1,000 branch offices because each one of them is working from their home branch office. So the need for a mobile network, a private mobile network, to be able to take advantage of the next generation of digital transformation calls for a network transformation upgrade. Okay, that's point number one. Now, I also mentioned spectrum and CBRS as a thing. So why does it have to be something other than Wi-Fi? Is a question that becomes is something you'll have to address.
Mhm.
But it really comes down to being able to control your own destiny in a customized fashion, so that the next generation of software workloads and use cases can be rolled out in the enterprise context in this hybrid work model of people partially back at work, most of the time working from home, collaborating with customers and your own colleagues, and being able to provide the goods and services in a high performance network with compute as though you were in your on-prem office, and being able to leverage the power of cloud native. There are a lot of layers of opportunity, but the real power of the private mobile network is to be able to roll out and given the advancing that's taking place on digital transformation, roll out the next generation of use cases and control your own destiny. And hence, private mobile networks is a key component of the network transformation, which is part of digital transformation.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned CBRS and shared spectrum. Could you elaborate more on kind of what's the opportunity of CBRS?
Absolutely. I think this is something that myself and Alef in general has been part of a movement. So let me try to pattern match it to Wi-Fi. And for some of us who's been in the industry, Wi-Fi was a game changer, right? Go back 20, 25 years ago when spectrum was being made available for free, okay, so that people could launch their own wireless or cordless, as it was called in the early days, networks in their enterprise premise, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge, as we have found, is the rate at which Wi-Fi has been adopted far surpassed anybody's expectations, and the economies that got created in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the applications that could run on top of it, the security workloads, everything. I mean, books and books and books have been written on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but there are some fundamental problems that are holding back the next generation of network transformation, and that is around what I call the 4 C's of CBRS. And so CBRS fundamentally gives you an opportunity to have managed spectrum. So again, keeping it simple, if you have your own Wi-Fi network, yes, you have a few channels on it, your neighbor, and you have to coordinate, and you can plan it, somewhat. And but it is left to our local imagination to be able to manage the coverage and the capacity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, in CBRS, what the FCC did, and I believe it's a precursor for many other countries also, and their corresponding FCCs, and it's true in Germany, parts of UK, Japan is evaluating, etc., is the FCC made a certain amount of spectrum available for quote unquote free, for that any enterprise could apply and get a license to operate in that frequency. Okay?
Okay.
Whatever free means. However, there's an added advantage. Nobody else will be using it in that region. So somebody's got to manage it. So the FCC didn't stop with creating this licensing paradigm. They actually are they have approved a handful of spectrum management companies, I think there are 5 or 6 of them who are already in operation. Anybody goes to Google or any search engine can look it up. We work with all of them. Uh, and what they do is they essentially have created a tiered access system for these spectral bands. Okay. And so what happens is the 2 of the C's or 4 C's that I talk about, the coverage and the capacity parts, become easily manageable given that 5G in general provides better coverage and capacity. But if the spectrum is also managed and it's not just unmanaged like Wi-Fi, then you can get a better return on your investment. And so CBRS, it's tempting to think of CB radio
Yeah.
from our youth,
Yeah.
but it stands for Citizens Broadband Radio Spectrum, and it is a new frequency. It's called band 48, which has been approved by the FCC a few years ago. And it's managed spectrum that any enterprise or any local community or a county or a school district can actually apply for. And the managers of the spectrum follow certain rules and they have to be approved by the FCC also. And new business models are getting deployed on top of the management also, just to be candid with you.
Mhm.
And there's an opportunity for us to take advantage of that and reduce one more layer of friction from enterprises being able to roll out the next generation of private mobile networks. So CBRS, while it is a new spectral band, I think it is a significant area of development which is important for the context in the context of private mobile networks, because 2 of the other C's, first 2 being coverage and capacity, the other 2 in my mind are control and customization, can happen only when you have coverage and capacity being managed.
Mhm.
And some of the companies who are providing this management layer for spectrum are actually exposing it through APIs, which is an even more interesting thing from a developer community. You literally go to a website, start to understand, and the next generation will give you more things that you can build on top of it. And you can build your own apps on top of those APIs. There's a whole vibrant community of people. And it would be a miss on my part not to mention, in addition to the community, there's actually an alliance, the CBRS Alliance, which has been renamed the OnGo Alliance, and anybody can look it up. And we are, actively looking into it and also being able to see how we can contribute to it. So it's an important development. While it is seen as the next generation of Wi-Fi, that would be an understatement. It could be hugely disruptive because enterprises and IT departments can be your own operator. Okay. And I want to go back to the CB radio comment I made. Okay. This is important. It's not immediate, but let's make an assumption that through this developer community that we're talking to right now, we figure out a way by which developers can discover unit economics. Nothing stops us from launching our own private mobile networks at home. It could be
Yeah.
really disruptive. And how can this private mobile network be part of a larger fabric of collection of private mobile networks and create private mobile internet, if you will? Okay. And end users can control their own destiny, because Wi-Fi has filtered into homes, right? There's no doubt about it. It's completely ubiquitous,
Right.
right? So to the extent we can take advantage, I understand CBRS is a US phenomenon and it's a lot more mature than other parts. Germany is equally mature in my view, but there are layers and waves of this conceptual underpinnings of CBRS that are taking place in the regulatory dimension in other countries also. I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years we talk about CBRS style networks and different bands in other countries also. It's a passionate area. It could be a webinar in itself, but I hope the audience gets a sense of why it's important for private mobile networks.
I mean, and I don't know if you have anything off the top of your head right now, but to put it in context for our audience, like what would be like an economic opportunity, or like kind of what would be some examples of like a private almost, I'm very, like you just said, like me being able to start my own private mobile network, like the ability to do that would be pretty incredible. But now my mind is exploding with like, okay, what can I do with that? What are some business opportunities? Why would I do that? Like, so do you have anything at the top of your mind that would be kind of just like a
more
real
than my
world?
top of my Absolutely. Lots has been written, and I'll start with the cliche, but I'll also explain some of the more exciting opportunities that are really tangible. Uh, from a use case perspective, IoT, artificial intelligence, surveillance, the opportunity to do machine vision, all that become front and center. Okay, I'll give you part of the challenges we had on the Topcoder platform was around recognition of objects in the middle of a video. Okay,
Yep.
I'll give you a very simple example that has come up. There is an opportunity, and part of the reason why I'm here, I'm looking into it when I'm in India here, is various governments are in the United States also are looking into a safety first mantra. Okay, for example, in India, there is people drive by motorcycles a lot. Okay.
Yes, a lot.
But the pandemic has has slowed things down, so you don't see that many people on the road. It used to be madhouse, right? However, helmets are a safety thing. Okay, is there an opportunity? Just look at it from the perspective of you want to be able to recognize if somebody is not wearing a helmet and potentially violating the law. Can you send a subliminal message to them that they need to get their act together? Okay, so you need an image recognition and an object recognition infrastructure to do it that is unencumbered from the other and in using managed spectrum. Okay, so that's an interesting opportunity. Now, if you can do that in the COVID context to do contact tracing and use artificial intelligence and machine vision and being able to look at people and say, hey, wait a minute, there are temperature sensing opportunities. So I need some GPU compute very close to this private mobile network, deploy a private mobile network and talk about machine to machine communications. This becomes a force multiplier. Now, the advantage, this is not just a topical conversation. You know, we started thinking about, okay, we'll get through this in the next 15 weeks and we'll be okay with the pandemic. Well, 18 months and running, we're still in the pandemic, or middle of it. Okay. I understand, you know, keeping fingers crossed, vaccinations are a thing, and pharmaceutical sciences has really delivered big time. Okay. And we are all going through various stages of accepting it and at the same time being able to accommodate how we interact with other people. But we have to start learning how to interact with other machines. To me, that's the important problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
There is a machine that is looking at you. Just accept that. Okay. But at the same time, how can you do it in a manner so that it is actually doesn't compromise on privacy, not used for the negative things that can happen, not complain about it, but really take advantage of things like machine vision and have a network which does not get interfered is a very important thing here. So managed spectrum is important. Having a private mobile network on top of it is important. Having a certain amount of layers of what I would consider the software and the workload management and things like that that are topical and at the edge is important. So that's one generation of use cases that are immediate and important. Another is around smart cities. You want to be able to understand people are not filling up potholes, Adam, as fast as we want them to. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, right? So cars moving around, being able to and being able to inform you. It need not be autonomous. It's just autonomous cars. Just driver safety, being able to inform. There's a pothole, and you're going too fast. Slow down. These kind of things, people are beginning to believe that there's a significant opportunity. In the United States, smart cities is another opportunity. There are lots of cool applications you can build on it. A third area of importance that we are finding interesting use cases is around education. People are still going through hybrid
Yep.
education. People are kids and college happening long distance as well as in classes. So, what are the education applications? I'm reminded of what Jeff Lawson, the CEO of Twilio, said. We can't wait to see what you can build, right? Our collective imagination, the two of us, is very limited, right? But I look at education is another hot area where the collective imagination of a community can lead to new use cases, and private mobile networks in the context of education, which is light telco as they call it, is a hugely interesting and important area which can take advantage of CBRS and private mobile networks. So that hopefully that gives a microcosm of ideas that the community can start to salivate around, and what I would say, not just salivate, but really rally around in the context of how to push the envelope and the collective imagination and make it a reality.
No, I think that helps, and thank you. And I think we could probably keep going. I think you could keep going on the examples. But I think it's always kind of grounding it a little bit for the audience, and because I think sometimes we may be in the weeds of the technology, not necessarily like, again, understanding like the larger picture. So I think hearing some of these examples, again, for myself, I get excited. I start getting ideas and things that I'd love to go do, find some time to go do, right? But no, this is great. So we talked about what you guys are doing with the APIs. Talked about overall little bit of brief history around spectrum and 5G and what Alef is doing with Edge, private mobile network. So kind of like back to the developers, like what can they kind of do to take advantage of the APIs that you guys have to kind of launch these private networks, private mobile networks, to get these things going?
So that's a very important question. So let me try to again look at the journey from the perspective of how mobile networks are rolled out. Okay, again, goes back to the history. First, there was 1G, which is just analog, but at the same time, it brought a foundational layer of using spectrum in an interactive fashion, right? It was like car phones, right?
Yeah.
Prior to that, it was just broadcast spectrum, right? So, but just the concept of being able to talk to and create a dynamic instance, a dynamic frequency instance for two people to make a phone call and then go away, and the same frequency being applied to somebody else, that was like magical, right? Of course, late 80s, early 90s. And then the whole thing became digital, and enough has been written and said, and all of us are familiar with the GSM and the 2G revolution that took place and the CDMA. I mean, there's just trillions of dollars of economic impact of this. There's no doubt. Then came BlackBerry, that became mobile internet from companies like phone.com and so on and so forth, which is more around the 3G bucket. And then 4G has been a very, very multimedia-centric revolution, right? Yep. But you're talking about private mobile networks in the context of 5G and that being a driver, then we have to understand that while there's been an important layers of tech, or maybe even tectonic shifts that have taken place in the technology dimension, very little has changed in terms of the deployment and management of these networks. Okay, it still takes, and it's private mobile networks are different than your macro network because you don't have to climb towers to put it in there. But you still have to look at it from the perspective of what can we learn from Wi-Fi, for example. What do we take for granted in Wi-Fi that is so easy for us now? Okay, 20 years ago, it was not straightforward because people started discovering new ideas around light access points and wireless LANs and things like that. So I break it down from a private mobile network perspective as what I call as the 5 steps to private 5G. Okay. Okay. The first step in rolling out your own private mobile network is you need to sign up for spectrum. Okay. And we've talked a lot about CBRS and how it's a very API model, and people can start building applications in terms of spectrum management and so on and so forth. So that's one area of simplification that the industry has discovered and is continuing to innovate on. So that's the first step. You sign up. Second is, we talked about it in the previous conversations. There's something called as the radio access network. The equivalent of that was the Wi-Fi access points. So again, the industry is rallying around simplifying it so that there are corporations which just give you these small cells. You literally plug it into an Ethernet wall unit, and you can start to plan your network using the APIs to be able to deploy your own radio access network. To me, that's just fascinating that you don't have to be trained for 2 years to be able to climb towers or anything like that. It's as simple as, following a set of steps, and as though you're commissioning your own, say, sound system at home, you want to be able to plan your wireless network, okay, your mobile network on your private property, okay. That's the second step. The third step is, we've talked about this sort of ad infinitum. Edge is a critical component of it, right? So you need to be able to connect this radio access network to the closest edge, if you will. We call those as edge points. And so we have created a set of APIs by which enterprises can go to our portal, learn how to do it, and we're going through the refinements as we speak. And maybe you can sign up for early access through our website as soon as we're ready to launch it. And so the third step is really around being able to take advantage of the edge from a private mobile network perspective. Okay, so that's the third step. The fourth step is, it's not enough. We've always talked about 3GPP is complicated. It's not just the radio access network. There's a whole network backend behind it. Mm-hmm. And it's called the packet core or 5G core, depending on how you look at it. We've created a fabric by which the whole thing has been abstracted. And you, through APIs, again, you connect this radio access network, and it could be in dozens of places. You could be an enterprise IT head who's managing a dozen locations. Okay, we're talking to a bank, for example, and I don't want to mention names here, but or even hospitals, right? Yep. And they want to be able to roll this out at scale. That's the fourth step. Okay, and then the fifth one is the devices need their credentials. In the world of mobile networks, it comes in the form of SIM cards, mm-hmm. right?
Yep.
So how can you deploy and manage these credentials, even if it is in an electronic form? So they call eSIMs, as they call it. The SIM card stands for Subscriber Identity Module. It holds the identity of the device. Okay. So again, through a portal and API access, you can start to obtain the electronic SIMs. And then you can start using APIs. You can start integrated with maybe your asset management system, maybe your identity management system. And the developers can start to customize it for these various enterprises they're associated with. And so this is, broadly speaking, the 5 steps to private 5G that I just outlined. In the coming weeks, please work with our developer advocates and developer relations teams. We'll be happy to roll it out to a larger community also. So look forward to discussing it in greater length. But I just wanted the opportunity, and thank you for that question, Adam. It is that simple. It's really 5 steps. Sequentially, you do it, and we want to be able to make it happen. Of course, the persona of the developers matters, but it can all be done in minutes. Mm-hmm. That's how we've abstracted the complexity.
Okay. Well, I hope for everyone out there, I hope everyone's grabbing this and understanding it. If you do happen to have any questions, please do let us know. Ganesh, so what is next for Alef? Like, what's kind of, you guys already have a lot going on. So kind of,
we have a lot going on, and the industry has a lot going on, right?
Yep.
But see, the beauty of software is the following. Okay, the community. And I want to treat all the developers who are listening to this and potentially going to listen to it, because Topcoder does have reach outside your own community. And essentially, the roadmap, software is never done.
Right.
Okay, it gets defined by the customers, and in this case, if it's a developer, the developer first approach teaches us, it gets defined by the developers. Okay,
Mhm.
and a few things I talked about is just limited to my imagination and conversations we are having with enterprise IT heads and developers in IT organizations. We are also talking to the larger system integration community because they bring their own, like I know Topcoder is associated with Wipro, for example, and they're one of the world's leading system integrators in the planet, right?
Yep.
And there's an opportunity for us to talk to these communities of developers to be able to understand what next. And so that's going to be a continuous process. And software, like I said, is never done. So that's one sort of horizontal dimension to look at it. The other dimension of it, like you said, we have a lot going on, is it's rolling out a mobile network is extremely complicated. It goes all the way from antenna to the application, as they say. Okay.
Mhm.
So we may have, when I talked about these 5 steps, there are certain buckets of it that got abstracted and we exposed it as APIs, but we want to go through this systematically all the way from the antenna to the application. It could be a 5G LAN opportunity, it could be a 5G WAN opportunity, it could be 5G security type of opportunity, etc. So we are working with partners to define that dimension also. Exciting things, times ahead, Adam.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think you mentioned real quickly kind of the security side of it. Obviously, that's going to be the big thing that comes up, especially with enterprises, right? So
Right.
is there any additional kind of security benefits topic, anything related to that you want to touch on?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So by very nature of the standards, cellular standards and cellular security has always been a little ahead of Wi-Fi. Okay, Wi-Fi was focused more on enabling the network effect of the so-called 802.11 radio standards from IEEE, but security became an add-on. Okay, but 5G's got embedded security in it because of the electronic SIMs, how the encryption standards, and yours truly had a front row seat in defining some of those standards in the early days.
Mhm.
So it's been a blessing, and at the same time, I've been extremely fortunate to be able to be part of that. Now, in addition to that, there's a whole movement around security that is taking place where many of the security functions which used to be on-prem over the past dozen years have actually moved to the cloud. You have firewalls in the cloud. You have web gateways in the cloud. Company like Zscaler and Palo Alto Networks and all these things are, the cloud has become a phenomenon, right? So what happened through that, which is suboptimal, is you were routing traffic through these security engines rather than creating the security engines where the traffic is. So that's another opportunity we are looking into, where the edge and the API movement can interwork and overlap with security. So there's a lot going on, certainly, and security is a very important topic from a control and customization perspective. There's no one size fits all for enterprises, and it's going to be policies and policy enforcements through APIs and things like that. So look forward to expanding on that on the coming weeks and months to come.
Great, great. Thank you for touching on that. So as we look to wrap up, I mean, is there something, one last thing that you'd kind of you'd like to let the audience know, or top of mind?
Yeah, it's a one-line mantra always, right? So while you're on a journey to simplify, okay, I would like to be able to interact with this audience and assure them that 5G, while on the face of it is complicated, uh, it's not just Alef. There's a lot of companies. In fact, I'm so proud of my team, and I say this. It's a kind of a lonely journey to be at the top, right? But we've been at it for quite some time, and the team has responded fabulously. We have over 100 partners in this journey.
That's awesome. Yeah.
130, to be honest. And what has happened is the developer community is also reacting to it positively. Okay, so as a result, tremendous areas of simplification have happened so rapidly, And I want people to be able to understand that this is not complicated. This is actually something that people can make careers on and be able to be what I would say reconfigure the entire internet. Okay.
Yep.
So my call out is to the community to be part of this journey. It's a movement. The movement's already started. Okay. So shout out. Thank you for asking that question. And if there are any further questions, happy to address them. I know we're up against the hour also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key thing, and a reminder to everyone here. I mean, the opportunity, like, one of the reasons why Alef and Topcoder are working together again is the opportunity for all of you to go and learn about this, learn the APIs, but again, like for your own career, right? Like there's different ways that you can go. Many of you are amazingly talented developers, but to be able to say, okay, what's the impact that your knowledge and now knowing the Alef APIs, but even knowing anything in the space could actually put you on a career path in this space. And obviously, I think, Ganesh, the topics you discussed, obviously, the ideas that I'm getting, like there's definitely a lot of room for growth, and really as you said, all the different economies we've seen with all the with the history, and now obviously the economies we're going to see, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey the past few years. I used to think it is despite the pandemic, but I'm beginning to believe it's because of the pandemic. That really, I mean, people are responding in fabulous ways, right?
Yep.
Whether it is pharmaceutical sciences or digital transformation, network transformation, the whole community effect. We've got to take the blessing, the ability for people to work together and create a force multiplier. It's just fascinating, totally fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any questions out there? I think there was one question around what does the OnGo Alliance do, or just a brief kind of understanding of what that is.
Yeah, so any new technology platform or opportunity usually has an alliance. So the CBRS Alliance started before CBRS was actually approved. So many of the participants in the OnGo Alliance, which is the new version of the CBRS Alliance, focus on new technologies as vendors who bring to the platform, or as system integrators who try to implement various technologies, or SaaS providers who are part of that OnGo Alliance. So it is a community of corporations, just like the Cloud Native Foundation. I don't think it is as mature as the Cloud Native Foundation, for example, but it's up to us to take advantage of it also. Over time, the membership has increased massively, and there's going to be a certain amount of, it is probably reaching a tipping point where it could be the go-to place to learn more about CBRS and various other things. Mm-hmm. And we certainly intend to contribute and participate in the OnGo Alliance going forward. And so learning is the key. In addition to the OnGo Alliance, we have our own plans to educate the community. So stay tuned for some of the announcements that our developer advocates will be making in the near term and in the longer term, and look forward to interacting with the larger community on that.
Yeah, and a reminder to everyone, please do go, if you have not already, go check out the developer portal, Alef Edge. I just dropped it into the chat. Make sure you go sign up, stay up to date with what is going on over at Alef. They'll send you updates. And of course, as Ganesh said, the ecosystem that they're creating, the partnerships that they have. Again, I'm just going to always reiterate this: the opportunity for everyone. If you jump in, take a look, and of course, pay attention to what's going on. Hey, Ganesh, I appreciate you being on again. I always enjoy talking with you. So thank you very much for your time and sharing, obviously, all of your knowledge, and of course, all the great things that are going on with Alef and Edge. And of course, I've also learned a lot. So thank you very much for your time. And again,
always a pleasure to talk to you and talk to the Topcoder community. look forward to continuing this journey with you and community, Adam. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you. Okay, everyone.
Thank
Thanks everyone for
Bye-bye.
joining. And of course, everyone that's going to be watching this later, please do reach out if you happen to have questions. We're always here to help. So thank you. Thank you, Ganesh.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.